Benjamin Franklin famously said, there are two certainties in life, tax and death. And I would like to add one more to that, and that's change. In retail, we are experiencing tectonic shifts, change at warp speed. The future is not what it used to be, as Paul Valery said. The future is what we call, in retail Darwinism. That's what we're experiencing now. We're experiencing a world where consumers are changing faster than businesses can adapt. Imagine a business with thousands of square meters of concrete and glass. How can they adapt to consumers that are shopping on platforms, are engaging with brands on platforms that didn't exist 6 months ago? So the future isn't what it used to be, and I hope I'm going to illustrate some parts of how the future may evolve when it comes to retail and places. One thing I would say is that the internet will not kill shops, physical shops. It will liberate them to be wonderful new experiences. And it's liberation that I want to talk to you about today. This idea of how we liberate the physical space, and I deliberately do not call it the physical shop, the physical space where consumers engage. So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to this very, very esteemed conference, and thank you, David, again. I run a business called Portland Design, as Richard said, and we work across the board from data and research to strategy, place strategy, retail strategy, all the way through to master planning and design of both physical spaces, both landlords, assets, and occupiers. But I'm going to do something really unusual today for a design business, where we actually draw things and deliver physical experiences for clients. I'm going to do something really unusual, and I'm not going to show you any of our work. I'm going to show you and illustrate to you some of the thinking that drives our work. Work in all these kind of environments and spaces, from mixed use to shopping malls, what we used to call shopping malls, to airports and the like. And our process is what really, I think, is important for us. And it's a 5-step process. And for us, placemaking, retail, starts with culture. I absolutely, passionately believe placemaking is not about architecture. Architecture must be a byproduct of understanding the trends that will drive our audience's behavior and understanding their journeys and their missions, what we call the cultural truths and the audience truths. And understanding from that the essence of place, the place truth, and how we translate that to the plan, to the master plan, to the strategy. And only on the 5th step do we take our pens out and start drawing things. So never, ever for us, placemaking should be driven by architecture. So our mantra, as that process describes, is people and places, not buildings and spaces. Understanding our audience and the essence of place to deliver future-ready design. And on your tables, you'll see a book that I've recently written, and I hope it adds some value to your work and your thinking. So the future of retail, for us, is not about real estate. It's about content. It's about content. And if you think about retail, and when I say retail, I mean from a development perspective or from a store perspective. If you think about it as content, it suddenly changes the whole frame. And of course, that content must be driven by an understanding of the culture of our audience. And I don't mean ethnic culture, I mean the culture of interest, the culture of behavior. And from content and culture, what we strive to do is drive community, that community of interest. And it's community that makes place. It's content that makes place. And place can only be successful if it responds to culture. And of course, culture is not heritage. Culture is something that moves, is organic, it changes, constantly changes. And so our places must be changed. Our places must be planned. We must develop master plans and design that is flexible, agile, that can shift from the data we get, from the insight we get from our audience. And that audience we call Generation C, not Y, not X, not Z, but Generation C. Because the key demand from Generation C is control. Our audience demand to be in control, whatever that may mean. Inconvenience, transparency, I want what I want, when I want, how I want. Being in control is the key demand. And of course, our audience are constantly connected. They live an always-on life. They want to collaborate with brands. They want to collaborate with each other. They want to co-create. They want to shape an experience. They want to shape the brand. And of course, as I said, they build communities with brand at the center, with place at the center, and they have a conscience. They care about the role the brand plays in the world, in their day-to-day lives. But also, this audience increasingly are walking paradoxes. They have a series of contradictions that makes our life, your life, very complicated. They have limited budgets, particularly currently with the cost of living crisis in many markets, but they have expensive tastes. They demand convenience on the one hand, but also have a social conscience. They care about sustainability, but they're addicted to fast fashion. They want shopping to be seamless, but also to be personalized. They crave authenticity, but spend much of their time in virtual worlds and online. And yes, they are loyal, but they're also some of the most promiscuous consumers that we're dealing with. So these are a bunch of contradictions that we have to navigate. But we have to shift when it comes to retail assets from hermetically sealed, soulless, dumb boxes for buying stuff to humanized, human scale, soft, not hard machines for shopping. Connected to community, not inward-looking and hermetically sealed. Smart, data-driven, programmable, organic, agile, flexible. Places for living, working, gathering, and of course, buying some stuff. We've got to shift from a shopping rhythm to a community rhythm. As we saw heard in the previous interview, it's no longer just about transactional space, retail and F&B and a bit of entertainment. We've got to mix the rhythm, healthcare, education, co-working, maker spaces. For us, this is the new retail. Co-working is as much retail as any fashion store is. We're developing co-working facilities for shopping centers. We call this Swelch, this ground level activation that makes real place, that makes real community, that responds to content and culture where shopping, working, entertainment, learning, culture, hospitality and health come together. Swelch is the essence of truly connected place. What we call the connective tissue, the activation that binds place, that brings soul to a place, that creates a spirit of place, and of course, a sense of belonging. A sense of belonging is the essence of successful place. So over the years, we've done a lot of work, and I personally have, with many FMCG, fast-moving consumer brands. And we talk a lot in that world about buy brands and join brands. And we translated that work and that thinking, those strategies that we've developed over the years with brands, to place. And we worked out this sort of idea of how do you shift from a buy place to a join place. And we developed a series of shifts where a buy place has a landlord, a join place has a host. A buy place thinks about operations, a join place thinks about concierge and service. A buy place thinks about periodic visits from its audience, a join place delivers daily visits from its audience. A buy place invests in pre-purchase promotion, a join place invests in post-purchase advocacy. Not come here, buy that, but what did you think? Share the experience. A buy place thinks about shopping. A join place thinks about community. A buy place focuses on what it says to people. A join place focuses what people say to each other. A buy place is about the content of advertising. A join place is about user-generated content and sharing. A buy place thinks about data on catchment. A join place really tries to get insight from community at the street level. A buy place engages with people as consumers. A join place engages with people as citizens. A buy place leases boxes. A join place curates experiences. A buy place thinks about marketing communication, one-way monologue, talking to or worse at your customers. A join place thinks about marcons, marketing connection, creating an emotional connection with your audience. And a buy place thinks about consumers. A join place has members, has fans. So that sets the scene. And in my book, I structure the book as 4 pillars of future readiness. And this is a little bit of an updated version of that for my next book, actually. So it's a bit of a preview. This idea of these 4 pillars that every place, every brand must, I think, really think about and deliver to be future ready. And the first pillar is what we call fast. The most important demand for consumers in this complex, busy world is convenience and speed and frictionless services, where it's simple, easy, automated, where people want what they want, when they want, how they want, and they want it now. 63% of global consumers are willing to pay more for simpler experiences. Siegel and Gale. Whether that's robotics, whether it's digital interfaces, or on-the-move services. A whole bunch of different types of service and product and experience that delivers hyper-convenience, just walk-out shopping, and we're seeing that grow. And of course, as Doug Stevens said earlier on, robotics in many, many forms is beginning to really take hold, whether it's robotic baristas or robotic pizza makers or robotics in logistics. We call this just-in-time living, coming from the manufacturing of just-in-time manufacture. The second pillar is the direct opposite of that. It's slow. This is about experience. This is about shoppable events, really delivering and targeting interest communities, constant newness and shareability. 70% of millennials would rather spend on an experience than an object. Accenture. That's an incredible statistic. Whether that's about experiences that are live streamed. Gentle Monster on the top right is an eyewear store that's more like an art installation. Serendipitous performances from So Far Sounds, competitive socializing, or what we call hyper-physical, where physical spaces, physical stores are going to compete with really immersive digital worlds. This otherworldliness of physical stores, we're seeing that more and more, and also hybrid. In this case, a bar with a shirt shop. Even for pets, I mean, how do we really develop retail for different types of audiences? In this case, and one of my favorite show fields in New York, really hyper-physical, immersive experience. And we're seeing this across the board from shops to actual big developments where otherworldliness is really taking hold as hyper-physical, and this instance in K11 in Hong Kong. The metaverse, very controversial. This is Decentraland, one of the metaverses. And you can see there some statistics. Within 3 weeks of Gucci opening a Decentraland store, they had 18 million visitors. And within the same period, Heineken had 2 billion impressions in the metaverse. Shares, comments, images, whatever. Many, many different types of engagement. But the most interesting piece for me was Domino's. So Domino's had many, many thousands of people, avatars, visiting the Domino's store. And they were ordering pizzas in the digital world through their avatars. But what was interesting is that the pizzas were being delivered physically. So that's real physical and digital coming together. What's interesting is Domino's are seeing that presence in Decentraland is behaving like a website. So is a future website a space where our audience as avatars will be visiting but engaging with us physically? This is really interesting, that combination of the physical and the digital. 1/3 of people are interested in attending lifestyle classes at their favorite store. Another type of hyper engagement, participatory experiences. From mental health experiences and stores, through to learning around Burberry, around dressmaking, through to stores and spaces that are really for bringing community together. This is all around the slow pillar. We call these the living rooms of our public realm. How do we create real engagement where participation is the new consumption? The third pillar is what we call local. How do you really localize? This idea of cookie-cutter retail, cookie-cutter shopping centers is dead. We've got to localize and create real locally driven place where we support local business and independence, create unique experiences found only here. And of course, it's much more sustainable. Authenticity is at the heart of many, many audience expectations. 55% of consumers prefer to buy from local brands to help support local and small producers. But it's not about the independents. We're seeing more and more big global brands localizing their offer. A pioneer was Nike in Melrose in LA, where they're using data, local data, to drive their assortment and their experience and how they design the stores. Lush partners with local coffee operators in their stores. Vans brings local influencers as part of their experience. And of course, Rafa, the cycling brand, they don't have stores. They're community centers. They're community hubs from around the world. So this localism is really, really key, a driver. But one of my favorites is Plaza Fiesta in Atlanta. Plaza Fiesta was a failing shopping center, and it was bought and converted into a Hispanic destination, Hispanic shops, restaurants, classes, childcare, a whole bunch of things. Create a real sort of community rhythm, as I say, in this old shopping center, and it transformed, it became very successful. Not because it was visited by the Latino community necessarily. It was visited by everybody, because it gave a truly authentic local experience derived from the local Hispanic community. And we're working very closely with Loan Design Club. Loan Design Club brings together a whole bunch of local designers and makers and puts them in one space with events. So locally driven fashion, wellness, and beauty kind of experience. We're seeing it more and more really sort of localized, in this case, a souk in Bangkok, but how we can see it across the board, even in washrooms. You know, how do we become really localized and individual? And one of my favorites is influencers. We're seeing local influencers become tenants. They're taking up space. They're occupying space, in this case, in a shopping center. And the problem here, for many, many retailers, they all complained that this influencer, all thousands of his fans came and blocked the front of all the shops. And they were there not to buy anything. They were there to experience this idea of the whole world of beauty and cosmetics. We're not changing the slide? No? Guys? Aha. Okay, thank you. clicker's not working. Is this time for my story? We've got a problem? Sorry, everybody. Out of my control.
Is it not working?
Doesn't seem that. No.
Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go and change this. Before I do that, I'm going to ask you a question. What is the project here in the Middle East that most excites you? Either a mall or a country or a story? What really excites you in this region at the moment? And while you answer that question, I'm going to take this and repair it.
Okay. The project that was spoken about just now, City Walk, I think is very, very interesting because it delivers on Swelch. It delivers this idea of mixed communities, mixed offers, where, again, it was mentioned about a university, I think it was, that brings day-to-day rhythm of footfall, and I think that's interesting. And I think it's recognized, and we're seeing the reduction of transactional physical space, on average 30%. Reduction in the projects that we're working on. But I can certainly tell you about some future projects in the Middle East that will be ones to look out for. One is Riyadh Airport that we'll be working on.
Hopefully that's working now.
Thank you. That's a quick plug. Thank you very much. Okay, so the fourth pillar is belong. Belong. And this sense of belonging is really important. Belong is about values, is about shared values, having an audience and an offer that aligns your values and your audience values around ethical consumption, looking at brands that have purpose at their hearts, go beyond product, beyond transaction, and of course, bring communities together. Brands that treat physical space as their community centers, where values, not value, is at the heart. And we're seeing consumers absolutely turn to brands that align with their values. They prefer brands more and more that are not just about price and product and service, but about values. And we can see that happening with Selfridges, with Patagonia, with Lululemon, with many, many brands around a whole set of different values. Tom's, I'll say Patagonia, look at Selfridges. I mean, the amount of communication and action they're taking around issues around the planet. And we can see the explosion of B Corps and B Corp certification. So this is not an accident. This is becoming a very important consumer preference. 40%, and this struck me really, really heavily when I read this statistic. 40% of consumers have stopped using a brand due to the way it behaves. Not due to its price or service, but purely due to the way it behaves. We can see, Incredible Edible is a community organization that brings people and takes space in shopping centers to grow produce for the restaurants. The first net zero fashion brand in Sheep Ink, the whole communication is around that. And we're seeing, Brompton Cycles, that's all about a brand about bringing communities together. So this idea of values and community is really, really important. And more brands, whether it's Lululemon, whether it's Gymshark, whether it's Peloton, they start as communities. Sweaty Betty, an athleisure brand, actually started as an online community around female health and has developed into an athleisure brand. There's many, many brands that are looking at that, and they are the 4 pillars of future readiness that we really sort of focus on. Okay, so retail has always been and will always be only about 4 things: recruitment, transaction, fulfillment, and retention. What's interesting is that transaction and fulfillment is migrating away from the physical space. I'm generalizing, but that's a general trend that's happening. And what we're left with, therefore, in those instances, is recruitment and retention. And if, as a physical space, you're there, your purpose is recruitment and retention, in fact, you're behaving like a media platform. The future of retail is no longer about real estate, it's about content. That media platform that content responds to culture and drives community. So what does that mean? It changes everything. If a physical space is a media platform, it changes the game. It changes the design. It changes the service proposition. It changes the technology. It changes the master plan. It changes the architecture. It changes everything. But most importantly, it changes the revenue model. And as Doug Stevens says in his book, and please read all of his books. He's an absolute genius, Doug Stevens. The physical store has the potential to be the most powerful and effective form of media available to a brand, the physical store. Unilever spends $13 billion on media every year. In retail, we want some of that action. We need to tap into the media spend of brands, not just the real estate and retail spend. That's really the future, I believe, of place. The stores and places of tomorrow will not only monetize experiences, but also the data that those experiences generate. How do we capture the data? Now, Doug spoke about the physical data in the physical space with heat cameras and sensors to understand where people are going, where they're stopping, where they're dwelling. What we have done, and we think we're the world's first design business to have our own AI-powered data tool that maps all online activity. It maps social media for any given catchment, any given location, from one building to a city. And we can understand from mapping that social media what our audience are interested in, what's important to them, what brands they follow, what they eat, what they drink, what films they watch. But much more importantly to what they do, we can have a granular understanding of what they think, the sentiment. And the AI deciphers billions of comments and posts and reviews and understands absolutely what people think about what they are involved in, what they're participating in. So this is really, really important for us. It informs our master planning, it informs our marketing, our social media, it informs everything. We've developed from this an evidence-based design process. We call it a risk mitigation process for our clients. Data activation, it's at the heart, and it will fight the increasing commodification of design and architecture, because this is about evidence-based. And so if we accept that 30%, 40% of physical space in any given asset will not be transactional retail, will be healthcare, wellness, education, co-working, maker spaces, whatever, as was spoken about in the interview. The remaining 70%, we believe, is going to divide into three typologies of retail, three typologies of physical space. Each typology will have a different function, and very important, a different rent model, a different revenue model. So the first is the traditional transaction and fulfillment, based on turnover rent, space rents, online uplift sales, click and collect sales, a whole bunch of different types of revenue, data-based revenue. The second is what we call community. This is where a brand takes a space to bring its community together, whether that community is about yoga or sushi or photography or electronic music or cycling. It doesn't matter. How do we get a rent model from that? Is it about how many people attend, participate? Is it about how long they spend? Is it about how often they come back? Is there a subscription model? Maybe some product sales. But there's a different type of rent model here. And the third, and most important, is what we call the recruitment model, the true media platform. And this is a great example. Converse, the sneaker brand, took a space, 4 levels, for 4 weeks. And during that 4 weeks, it had 5,300 odd people participate, with an average dwell time of 40 minutes. It drove. In this place, there was DJs and music. It wasn't just sneakers. A whole bunch of different hyper-physical activities. It drove 1.7 million live stream views. It had 40,000 followers, increasing followers on Instagram in that 4 weeks. It took $50,000 during the 4 weeks. But most importantly, it drove a total of 226 million media impressions. If a Facebook click is 8 cents and it lasts a millisecond, how much is a brand willing to pay for 40 minutes of undivided attention of their brand? What was the rent of this space? How was it calculated? Data-driven, data activation, data-driven. We can capture the data of how this space drives media impressions. Don't lease boxes become a place curator? Shift from shops with products for sale to stages with stories to share. Because this is the era of the surprising, the spontaneous, the unplanned, and the serendipitous. Serendipity, a happy coincidence. How do we design a happy coincidence? That's our challenge. Our challenge is to create serendipity machines. Because one truism of serendipity, of a happy coincidence, is that it's not price sensitive. How do we develop in our places, in our shopping centers, in our stores, serendipity machines? Because the new metrics are very different. This is a new world where it's not only about sales per square meter, it's about ideas per square meter, engagement, senses. How many surprises per square meter have you had in your stores or your shopping centers this week? Delight, smiles. How many clicks per square meter? How many shares? We can measure these. How much dwell per square meter? These are the new metrics of future readiness. Because a future-ready place, a vibrant place, a true place, a swelch place will speak like a magazine, will change like a gallery, will still sell like a shop, will share like an app, will build loyalty like a club, will seed like an incubator, will experiment like a laboratory, will connect like a community, and entertain like a show. Let me leave you one last thought. There are 3 types of people in this world and 3 types of business leader. Those that make it happen, those who let it happen, and those that wondered what happened. In this fast-paced, moving world, fast-paced retail landscape, don't wonder what happened. Get future ready. Thank you so much.